had that crucifixion in the Philippines and you get a nail put in, but it's like, I promise you, it's... As someone who's been crucified, it's a bit kind of, it's just not that bad. It's a bit like getting your ears pierced and then, anyway.
I think we're in the midst of a Safranisance. You've got Race Around the World 2026 coming back, and then we got Shut Your Big Fat Mouth. How do you feel like you've changed in that time since Race Around the World in '97?
Oh my God, I tried to change. I remember one of the reasons I went from doing these comedy documentaries to doing a book. I did think I'm gonna try to grow up. It's like, times have moved on. I can't just be this pranky guy. But then I just stayed me, but in the books. And I mean, a real good example of that is in my absolute first TV series that I was part of, Race Around the World, I broke into Disneyland. And that became a thing. And then my last book, so it was only a couple of years ago, where I'd broken into Kanye West's house, and where I'm going, yeah, you haven't really grown up, have you? That's not really maturing, is it? And I actually feel the world wants more of this cheekiness now.
Jewish Australian comedian journalist. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Spent a week living in one of West's homes in Los Angeles. As if Kanye didn't hate Jews enough.
Well, I've never heard him speak on this. I've never heard him speak.
That a Jewish guy is the guy who squatted in his house and
I think
wrote
that's why
about
he did it. I think he was like...
Oh, that's hilarious.
I've made a career out of blasphemy and offence.
Don't do me in, John Safran.
Are my days numbered?
I do try to not do pranking anymore. I would do it if there was enough of a justification, but yeah, I regret duping people. But it's usually not like the great socio-political aspect of whatever the thing was. At the time, I felt it was really important to the art that I do this, and I swear I try to do that less. Or I try to not do that. Like when I contact people now, I'm going, listen, this is the context and whatever. I've grown up that way. I've realized, it can be selfish unless there's a real valid justification for just being a bit of a dupe. But I've tried to be crazy too. And I just can't every time I try to take the high moral ground about something, someone can correctly point out like, oh, is that really true? Like even they're just then. Yeah. I'm going, oh, well, I do not dupe anymore. John, you broke into Kanye West's mansion and squatted there for a week. Just shut up.
Do you look back at your work like differently in 2026?
Only that, let's go again, this show, where there's like a kind of a little exorcism. He's going, man, John's gone soft. He used to get a big exorcism. And now in this show, it's a little exorcism. You know, it's like if Fred Durst comes out again and he does break things up or whatever the hell it is. Me, and it's 20 years later, but I'm still getting an exorcism done. You're like, woo, woo. Have I changed? It's like, no, I'm literally still getting an exorcism done.
I pray in the name of Jesus, Lord, that you will release your power right now in the name of Jesus.
I think what's offensive is a very poor measurement or very poor barometer of what's offensive. And by that, I know that sounds like I'm drunk. But what I really mean is, just say politicians in Parliament, if they're deciding whether to go to war and like kill all these people overseas, they'll like phrase that in the most polite language. They'll be polite. They won't be offensive in the way that they say that. And so I don't even think what is on the surface level offensive is actually a barometer of what's offensive. If there's like someone who's less sophisticated and they say things in stumbly ways and they use swear words or whatever like that, but then you have like well-educated politicians who know how to phrase things very carefully so they don't say anything. They can get them. One on the veneer is being offensive, but on a deeper level isn't being offensive. And then the other on the surface level on the veneer is not being offensive. The deeper is being offensive. If that makes sense. Possibly I am drunk.
John Safran is testing the limits of what Australians can say.
Do you watch porn?
Do I watch porn?
And do.
I have a lifetime ban from YouTube.
What could possibly go wrong?
With this SBS doco, one of the big kind of behind the scenes things was it took so long. There was like a dim green light. It was dimly green lit. But it took so long for it actually to get the full shining green light. And so when it was kind of green lit, it was like a different world. And so, for instance, I imagine people are going to watch this doco, and because there's a little bit in the voiceover about Bondi, they might be going, man, John and SBS are so nimble, they've got this documentary, this really relevant documentary, in response to Bondi. It's like this actual documentary was actually wrapped up and locked off before Bondi, and then we just got to put a little bit of, things to kind of flavour it or whatever like that. There was a bit of discussion about whether the framing should be, or John looks back at his past and kind of wonders, like, was he wrong or whatever? And I just said, even on a creative level, whether something's right or wrong, often that sorts it out a bit, if you know what I mean, and I just thought, if we go down that road, it's just going to be the most irrelevant conversation. By the time this show actually goes to air, I just had this sense the world will have changed and we're going to look like we're 5 years too late to a conversation that your auntie was having on Facebook in 2020. I've lived through different epochs, different seasons, and one thing I just know for sure is like we're never at the end of history. Like we always think wherever we are and whatever the zeitgeist is, it's like, and now this is how it will be like forever. Anyway, the reason I say that is because I know maybe 5 years ago or something, it was like, lots of questions about whether you're allowed to do dark, edgy comedy and there has to be a reckon or whatever like that. But I think we are kind of drifting into like a world where, you are. Like people aren't really like obsessed about edgy comedians like they were 5 years ago. Or looking at the creative community, if there's people who push buttons and they go too far, like there's these debates where they pick out the absolute worst case scenario of them to then make this more broader thing that, isn't it a problem that artists transgress? And it's like, no, it's not a problem. It's like, it's fine to kind of go through a case by case, but overall, no. And it's like, I can't accept in Australia where, for instance, there's religious freedoms and that's really so tangled. It's where it's like, well, you get to set up a church or a mosque or a synagogue and you get to say all these things that are so inflammatory because that's what your scripture says, and there seems to be real world consequences for all of this like that. Like, I can't live in a world where I have to pretend that the problem with speech and transgression going too far is, there's comedians and they're cheeky and they're ironic. I just don't think that's, in the overall scheme of things, a problem at all. It's my vibe that out of 22 million Australians, or however many, they get things like irony, sarcasm. They get that humour's good because they get that comedians say things, but you're meant to interpret it. Like, I don't think like the vast majority of Australians are confused by this. Most people, I think, they understand sarcasm, they understand irony, and they understand and value humour. I had this one guy from Shut Your Big Fat Mouth where he agreed to an interview, who was the lawyer who represented one of the guys who did a Zig Heil in public and claimed it wasn't a Nazi Zig Heil, it was a comedic Zig Heil. Anyway, when I turned up to this lawyer's office, he was like looking really excited or whatever. He goes, I can't wait to see what the prank is. He said yes, because he was hoping I was going to prank him, right? I was like going, man, he's going to be disappointed. There's this like little like flavour thing where I bring out this little like card with an arm and a can Zig Heil or not Zig Heil. When that came out, oh my God, he was so happy. He's like, yes, this is it. This is the prank. I'm being pranked. And I just thought, I think all Australians should be like him, where like he, not only does he accept that I'm going to prank, he wants to be, and he's grateful for the prank.
That interesting line between what is criminally offensive and not offensive.
There's this jerk. I want to go, screw you, you're a freaking and then do a Zig Heil to him.
I don't think you would get away with that one.
To you, what is free speech, and is there a line?
The best I can offer back to that is, I feel that if someone's going to say, listen, I think we all have to be polite or whatever, you have to be consistent and a bit across the board. I know you can't be perfectly even-handed, but you have to try to be even-handed. And then the opposite of that, if you're going to say, listen, I think we should have a right to be inflammatory because we've got to say what we want to say, you've got to show some goodwill to the world by showing you're willing to do that a bit across the board. You can't be like, oh, I so believe in free speech and you should be able to say what you want to say, but then the way you execute that thought is you, in a very narrow way, you're obnoxious to like one particular minority group, and then you step on eggshells around everything else. Like, to my mind, that's when it becomes a bit icky. I think it's fine to want to live or present the case that you want to live in a society where there's more free speech and there's more like elbowing and blah, blah, but you have to express it in a way that you're showing you're not just being a hypocrite and you're not just doing it in a self-serving way. And so even though like I'm a comedian, I'm not like a politician or whatever, I think in a sort of like a subtle, not in a subtle way, but in one way over my career, like, yeah, I've shown that. Like, imagine if I was like, hey, I think you should be able to be edgy against religion and you should be able to be a comedian who's like blasphemous, blah, blah, blah. But then I just lay into like the Hindus, you know, on my project and no one else. And it'd just be like, hang on, are you really for provocative speech against religion, or do you just not like the Hindus? But because my work kind of spreads it around a bit, it just gives it a totally different context. And I think a lot of people accept it. They go, well, you can't accuse him of being a hypocrite. Someone will post something online and they'll go, oh, look at John laying into the Christians. But I notice, oh, very interesting that he says, you know, he won't lay into the Jews. Isn't that interesting? And then like people follow it up with links to 75 examples of me laying into the Jews. And it's like, oh, very brave John Safran on ABC or SBS, or laying into the Christians and the Jews. Oh, isn't it interesting that he kind of won't go the Muslims? And then, you know, someone links to me putting a fatwa on Rove McManus.
I'll bring you the evidence. So his name's Rove McManus, and he's, I don't know how best to describe him, but he's not very pleasant. Is the book he's planning to release, which is Satanic Verses 2, Muhammad the Prophet, What the?
Sheikh Omar Bakri later told evidence was falsified. There is no fatwa on Rove.
I think I am a bit of a stone in the shoe for at least some people in Australia by putting myself out there as a Jewish person who's like not afraid or whatever. There is a bit of a, I think it makes it a bit uncomfortable for some people to totally throw the Jews under the bus. Like one change that I've noticed is that it used to be like before October 7th, that if you were like anti-Israel, you'd put in a lot of effort to kind of make it very clear that you don't want this to bleed into, I mean, I don't know what they're thinking in their heads, but it's like, oh, it's not about the Jews, you know, it's about the Israeli government, it's about da-da-da-da-da. And I feel like that's become slippery where it's like, there's social cachet in going, oh, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. If there's a Jew that you like that's been in Australia, it's like, not only are they not going out of their way to try to go, it's okay to be Jewish, they're sort of, there's social cachet in kind of just, poke at the Jews. So, which is just bizarre for me. It's slightly unsettling. And also it's kind of inconsistent. Like if someone's going to be edgy about lots of things, but you're being edgy about Australian Jews solely just comes across as a bit weird. Things around conspiracies and stuff like that, like it's always just a few lily pad leaps away from the Jews. And I remember going to this bookshop when I was younger, and it was like one that had like mild conspiracies, and it was like into different spiritual things and stuff like that. And you'd start off on one edge of the bookshelf in this bookshop and it'd be, UFO, aliens are real, and that was all fun or whatever. And then you kind of go along the line, and the next thing is the JFK assassination is fake. And then you go across more and it's like the Freemasons control, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And then it's like, yeah, it ends up the Jews did 9/11. And that just seems like always the case. To give context, it was like this free speech conference that the organisers and the participants felt had to happen in private, so they weren't shut down. But I managed to get in or whatever. And generally when the people there, they seemed on the surface, there was like good-natured, even if you disagreed with them about their opinions, like because there was things about should we be given the jab or not, whatever, and blah. But then I'm sitting there and the organiser, starts questioning the number of Jews who died in the Holocaust. And it's like, what? Just like at that bookshelf all those decades ago, it just ends up with the Jews.
Round 22, St Kilda versus Port Adelaide. Can I use Jewish prayer to determine the outcome? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Yesh Saints.
I've been pretty lucky as a storyteller and blessed as a storyteller that I grew up in the Jewish community. I kind of grew up a bit of an insider and an outsider, and I just conceptualized it in, like, you can be part of different communities. I'm part of the Australian community, but I'm also part of this Jewish community. Like, you can be multiple selves. And I just felt it was like, you know, like, you have different Indigenous people, and they've part of a family, part of a community of Muslims and Hindus and whatever, you know, Irish Australians. So I kind of felt like I was quite settled about it. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm part of this little world where we've got a history and you're part of a community, but not in this, we're the Amish and I can't, I refuse to talk to, you know, anyone who's not part of my gang. I think it's been really handy to be an insider, outsider in regards to like my work and how I tell stories. I remember when I was on Race Around the World, the first time I was like in my head, because at that time there was a bit of backlash to quote unquote wogs out of work, which was comedy. And so that was in the Italian and Greek communities and other communities in Australia. There were a lot of comedians who, if they had that heritage, they'd taken the mickey out of their upbringing and talking about their grandparents and stuff like that. And there was a bit of backlash to it, like, oh, is this like just too easy or something? And I remember when I was on Race Around, I go, listen, I'm not going to do the Jewish thing. I'm not going to do the Jewish thing. And then I went to explore getting baptized in the Ivory Coast by this little church in the forest there. And then I just thought, oh my God, this is so much funnier if I title this at the start, Mum, I'm not Jewish anymore. I go, listen, just this once, I'll do it. I'm never going to do it again. And then, of course, it's like 2 weeks later and I'm streaking through Jerusalem. And then, like, everything I've done ever since. So I did not abide by it at all. But I just think it's sort of relatable to people outside the Jewish community, like the whole dynamic. I think I make a good point that we're really unaware of how we might be kind of abrasive and annoying to other people. And so we're so aware of how other people are abrasive to us and want to make rules around that. Like just say myself personally, if I just pretended I'm not kind of a bit jarring and push buttons or whatever, and I was like really moralizing about how other people should not be allowed to be offensive, it'd just be a bit like, look at yourself and how you kind of can be offensive to other people. Just put that into your equation when you're sorting out who should be banned, who shouldn't be banned, or who should be censored and who shouldn't. Like, just say you follow a religion and you believe in it, and then you're getting really offended by like some blasphemy or some art or something like that, or something that questions you or whatever. It's just like, well, actually, seeing a religious person, you're bothering to make this big hoo-ha about how you shouldn't have to live in a world where other things are offensive to you. Well, you know, what about you and your religious scripture? That's pretty, like, modern Australia is giving you a lot of leeway to be really offensive because there's so much, you know, what through 2026 eyes is like offensive. Before you get it all high and mighty and complain about everyone being offensive to you and your religious belief, just think about how Australia has decided, a secular country has decided to be tolerant of you, even though there's examples of you being kind of really annoying and offensive to other people. So just have some self-awareness about that. I think secular people have to do that too. I think people of all political persuasion, you're grating to someone else. And so just keep that in mind before you start passing these decrees on who should be shut up, because you might get trapped in it yourself. I think it's really strategically bad to start trying to kind of stop other people. I mean, but having said that, I understand that as a society we're going to make rules and things are going to go to. That's fine. Like, I'm not saying, oh, if someone's busted for publishing revenge porn, I'm like, no, what about the free speech of the person publishing the revenge porn? Like, I draw all sorts of lines myself. So it's not like I'm saying, oh, just free speech for everyone or on every possible thing, but just generally just have a bit more self-awareness about how maybe you and your beliefs, whatever they are grating to other people in Australia, and you're being tolerated for your gratingness.
Underneath everything, you do have like I think maybe an optimistic sense to it. Like, I mean, why would you be doing what you do unless you cared about this world and wanted it to be better and kind of shine that light?
Yes.
You know?
Yes, correct. Don't interrupt anyone when they're complimenting you.